presentation.
Thank you, Ken.
Two presentations. The first one here by Richard McConnell, Devon Sudo, Emian Wasmo, Kenneth Long, Angus Fletcher, and Morgan Constable. Narrative Path to Creativity. The second one will be by Alex Smith and myself on instant feedback. We start first with yours.
Okay, well, good morning. I think we're any moment now, Devin will be coming up, so I'll just keep my eyes peeled for when she shows up. I think dropping her kid off, so she'll be here directly. So the question here that we pose is, can creativity be assessed? And the answer, of course, from us and our belief is yes. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. That's captured in the research report, Narrative Paths to Creativity, Evaluating Human and AI Contributions. And so I was, oh, good, there's Devin. Okay, great. Devin's here. Yay. Okay. So, again, that's going to be the three of us kind of tag teaming this today. I'll give some background and some depth and some context to what we did here. And then I'll let Devin and Ken kind of go through, because what Devin and Ken did was sort of an interesting collaboration that took human assessments of creativity using something called the consensual assessment technique, and then building AI personas that approximate human judgment on what creativity looks like. And we'll talk about that. First off, a little background. This is a journey on studying creativity that we've been on for a while. Angus Fletcher wrote the article there in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences in 2022, looking at a difference between narrative cognition versus divergent thinking. Improving creative thinking through narrative practice was in 2023 here at ABSEL on the 50th anniversary. That was an experiment we did at Fort Leavenworth. We basically had a 2-hour experimental lesson that we used on our students. We had a test group and a control. Test group got to do the 2-hour lesson. The control did a legacy lesson that basically discussed the concepts of creativity. And the test group outperformed the control, equivalent to a standard deviation. So a statistically significant shift in creativity. And then last year, my colleagues, some of whom are not here, Jennifer Petrie-Wyman, Ian Mercer, and Adam Knatvich, Angus Fletcher again at OSU, we did improving creative thinking through gameplay. Okay, so I was looking at 3 specific games. And then more recently, in December of 2024, we did an article in Military Review's online exclusive entitled From Research to Reality, Cultivating VUCA-Resistant Thinking in CGSC. VUCA, for those of you who are not familiar with it, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I know Ken will build on that when he's in his portion of this discussion. Okay, so that's actually on the cover of the From Research to Reality. These are my students. Usually they don't use rubber ducks to visualize a battle plan. In this case, I think they were being a little bit humorous as they were doing it. But there is this concern in the military circles: how do we parse the difference between art and science? Science is something that we tend to emphasize. However, operational art is something that's extremely important. Usually, is the difference between victory and defeat for us. Exceptional information is a concept regarding information that either displays a threat or an opportunity that you had not anticipated when you planned, yet it emerges during execution. And so that's something we're also looking at. And then, how do we use creativity to imagine what's unexpected so that we don't get surprised by our opponents so much? And so that's really what creativity is, something we're trying to build. And I will make this presentation available to all of you. Some of these links. So that's the link to the actual article on the top. And then down here below is a link to a video that Ken created called Shifting to Decision Adaptation Mindset. It's on YouTube, but we'll make these links available to you. And then, so this is what happened last academic year. We were directed to add these 6 hours of creativity curriculum to our initial instruction. Creative thinking through narrative cognition, that's the experimental lesson that we used during the 2022 experiment that was in the 2023 ABSEL paper. And then these other two, unmasking leadership failures through narrative practice, which really is looking at management of fear and anger. And then 53 is recognizing exceptional information. How do I anticipate the emergence of a threat or an opportunity that I had not planned on? Okay, and then the other thing we've been directed to do by our leadership is has to do with this, the complexity toolkit. That's also a video that Ken created. By the way, these videos were created using artificial intelligence, and they're quite interesting. This gives you like a 2-minute primer to the complexity toolkit. But these are the things that we are building this coming year: the data literacy, critical thinking, systems thinking, creative thinking, and artificial intelligence. These are like 2-hour classes, but it's intended to be threaded throughout the academic year. Okay, and then I just kind of offered this as sort of a resource to you. It's in the note pages as a whole, completely builds this out, and there's links to some good articles because I think all of us know that the world is changing rapidly, and we're going to have to change with it. I think there's 2 truths that we have to accept. 1, the rate of change is only going to accelerate. 2, the magnitude of change is only going to increase. And if that's the case, we can't avoid change. And those of us who are seeing what's going on with artificial intelligence, it's just absolutely apparent. It's not. So for those who are struggling with, like I am, because our biggest challenge, if you read the article From Research to Reality, there is 2 graphs that are our survey results. One shows the students love the new instruction, and the other shows that the faculty hated it. And so this is one of our biggest obstacles, is to try to overcome a reluctance to teach creativity, because there are some people that believe that it's, well, first of all, they believe they're not creative, which I don't believe is true. I think we're a lot more creative than we give ourselves credit for. And 2, in the military, we have to be creative. Otherwise, if we can't adapt, we will not succeed. And you're seeing that in Ukraine right now. Okay. All right. I'm going to hand this over to Devin and let her talk about this. Devin, off to you.
Great. Thank you all so much. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to all of you. My name is Devin Tomasulo. I work at the University of Pennsylvania in the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program. And there was an echoing issue in our tech the other day. I just want to pause and make sure that I'm not echoing in a way that's uncomfortable. Thumbs up for everyone? Okay, excellent. Let me know if that changes. So this has been a really engaging and interesting project, not just because Rich and Ken are excellent collaborators, but also because for me, I have a extensive background in large-scale assessment development, and then I've now been deeply studying skills like creativity. So the question of how do we and can we measure creativity in a large scale way is a really exciting one for me to be able to think about. So there's really 2 lenses through which we approached this technique. The first is in terms of integrating it with the curriculum that was presented. So Dr. Fletcher's foundational work, and then how Rich adapted it into the classroom. Rich was kind enough to give me a crash course in all of that. And I really wanted to think about assessments in a way that integrated well with all of the foundational theory that Dr. Fletcher gave us, so that we're not just having some multiple choice that feels separate from the experience, but that it's well integrated. Also that it's short so that teachers don't have to give a lot of time to it. So these are some of the things that we thought about ahead of time. We also, in Dr. Fletcher's work, he does a really beautiful job of breaking creativity down into sub-skills, which from a large-scale assessment perspective and a perspective of wanting to give folks personalized feedback hopefully in the future, being able to break a large skill like creativity down into these sub skills allows us to be more dynamic and personalized in our feedback and in our data collection. So two of the areas that we decided to focus on here were around plot twisting and perspective taking. So the tasks were designed specifically to allow the students to demonstrate those skills of perspective taking and plot twisting. The third item that we had was also a legacy item so that we can start tracking trends over time across these classes. So we developed them with that in mind. We also decided to do a pre-post, which is interesting because it allows us to measure student progress from like before the course to after the course, and it can help us control for mediating factors like advanced writing ability or things like that. And it makes it a little bit easier to collect nuanced data rather than just saying somebody's a 7 in creativity, right? We can say, in plot twisting, this was the effect that we saw in this group of people. So that was our approach from integrating it into the classroom, aligning it with Dr. Fletcher's material. And then from a scoring perspective, Ken will go into a bit more detail, but thinking about it from the large scale side of things, for automated scoring, really the approach mostly is to predict human scores. So we want to set our human judges up in a way to do valid and reliable scoring, because in the future, when we want to try to experiment with large language models, we want to have a lot of good data from our human scorers who are making really critical judgments about creativity. Because creativity, like key aspects, novelty and usefulness, those are judgments that are really hard to make if you're not familiar with the field. So for me, as somebody who's on the outside of the Army, what I would judge as a novel idea is probably quite wrong. Also, what I would judge as useful is also quite wrong. So it's really important that we have these human judges who are making these determinations around the level of creativity according to their understanding of the field, and that these items themselves are specific to the field as well. We're not asking them to determine plot twisting outside of their field of knowledge. We're baking everything into their specific field. We also decided in the scoring to shrink the scoring scale, again, with an eye on the future and thinking about how to set ourselves up for training automated scoring based on these human experts. We condensed it to a 4-point scale because sometimes I think previously we had a 7-point scale, and distinguishing between something like a 6 and a 7 is very hard for humans to agree on. So it would not set us up well for training an automated scoring system after that. The other reason that we decided to select a 4-point scale was that there's no middle score. There can also very easily be clumping in the middle, and having a 4-point scale allows us to have a nice dispersion without putting too many points for contention across our different judges. So those were kind of the two aspects that fed into what we created, both what we wanted to measure and how we wanted to measure it, but also integrating it into the experience in a way that was short and also personalized to the material itself. But Ken, I'll hand it over to you to go a little bit deeper into the CAT technique.
For sure. So since this, let me talk about the CAT first. So the essential element of CAT technique is that you have a set of empaneled experts who are independently evaluating domain-specific recommendations for change. And the CAT works because each of these individuals on the panel has life experiences in which they've been successful, and then you end up trusting that internal judgment however it was acquired. And if you have independent panel with a variety of experiences, then the consensus of each of these individuals coming together gives you more confidence that what you're seeing is actual true in the world. You could think of it as like the wisdom of crowds approach, except that you're using a narrowly constrained discipline And so instead of a crowd, you have a team of independent evaluators that are excellent. That's the strength, but also the limitation, because human factors will tell you that you can only evaluate with a fresh mind so many times. So when we did the first pilot program, we had about 300 students making two recommendations, each of which was a paragraph long. So every board member was evaluating 600 paragraphs to determine how creative they felt that was. So you can only do so many of those. Then when we scaled this up, we're now talking about 1,000 students, and we had 3 free prompts and 3 post-treatment prompts. So now you're talking 6 times 1,000. Now you've got 6,000 transactions to evaluate. It took us almost 2 months to be able to fight our way through that program. So the strength is also the limitation. If you want to change the world in this way, then you've got to solve the problem of scale and leverage. The investment of the human team in those 2 sets of human generated scores now gives us an amazing training database for all future iterations of AI as grading. So in a separate effort that we did, we were able to generate 4 or 5 very different, unique AI judge banks that could then rapidly evaluate. And in less than a day, I could evaluate with AI what took me 2 months and a team of experts to do. And when we got very consistent results. I want to add something about the 4-point scale, which was genius. If it hadn't been the 4-point scale, I would have just quit. What we discovered on the 4-point scale, it connects very nicely to the diffusion of innovation curve, which was one of the tools that we used to train one version of the AI so that its judgment would sort of conform to a well-known distribution of how creativity manifests in a human population. What we generally found as our guidance, the only guidance that we gave the human judges were that a score of 1 meant you were kind of disappointed and a little sad at what the student had offered, like, that's it, well, thanks for playing. A 2 was considered to be pretty good, what you would expect, well done, get back to work. A 3 became a noticeable creative spark that you said, that is pretty good, and I think we could probably use that right away. It turned out that category 4 had the widest divergence among the faculty that were judging, because we said, this thing is so unusual that I'm not sure if this guy is crazy or crazy like a fox. And it just so happens that when you have large organizations that are in competition, the search for novelty is the only place where you can find a strategic competitive advantage. So something that's in category 4 is something that needs much further investigation to discover if there's any fire in that smoke. It may not, but it's far enough off the beaten path that there just might be something truly transformative. So the 4-point scale actually brings that into very clear awareness. You end up getting a bimodal distribution. You get a normal looking curve with the 1, 2, and 3, and then you have the category 4 outliers. Well, that's really important to know, because you could actually use AI to quickly categorize all the things that are knowable, very good at pattern matching, and then just those things that are category 4, which turned out to be around 5 to 10% of the offerings. You could then put together a team that would investigate that for really a deep search. So you get advantages in the human and AI partnership, but you can also do that also with the AI. I have a separate paper that describes 5 different methods that you might use to develop an independent AI judge, and I will defer answer questions on that one till later. So I'm going to go forward to the complexity toolkit slide, if we might, and just to show you where we are in our current thinking. So it is our contention, and there's a lot of consensus in the literature, that the state of nature that you find yourself in should drive a choice on which strategy to apply to solve the problem that you think is out there. So on the northwest corner, you see the Cynefin framework. A fellow Welshman put that together. Thanks a lot. We had to buy a vowel to make it pronounceable. So Dave Snowden puts together 5 states of nature. On the east side of that, lower right, when everything is clear, you should just do what's right. If it's complicated, you can understand it and then apply a technique and execute mechanically. When you go to the west side of that diagram, however, nature is not complying with you. If it's complex, you may not even be able to compute the solution, so you must use artful judgment. If it's true chaos, then what you have is a unique, one-off state of nature in which it's so sensitive to the start position and the interplay of complexity that you cannot predict the outcome, much like turbulence. It follows the laws of nature, but you can't know what the deterministic future is like. And then in the middle is the state of confusion, which is my zip code. And in the state of confusion, it's not really clear which one of those 4 categories you're in or that you're transitioning to. So when you are in complex, chaotic, or confused, then the normal rules of practice of standard work no longer apply. Rich can talk about exceptional information that comes from the environment and tells you that you should not just follow your SOP, that you need something else. So in our world, the probability that you're on the west side is much greater than ever before. And so our standard rules of SOPs and training no longer work. So when we have, in Army speak, unstructured problems, we need to not follow SOPs, but we need to do something we called Army design methodology. So in response to that, we've created what we call the complexity toolkit, which is an integrated set of 5 tools that we use in the following way in order to get our arms around these unusual circumstances. We use a little bit of critical thinking to confirm that we're in an exceptional information. In other words, your sensors are well calibrated and you can trust the alert that things are abnormal. We then invest immediately in a creativity session to make sure that we are looking broadly and deeply so that we have enough, what I call dimensionality and possibility space in order that we can encompass this new problem or opportunity. We then use those 3 tools in the middle, systems thinking, data literacy, and artificial intelligence, to develop a rapid solution. Systems thinking by picking the right model to use and process to follow through. Data literacy to make sure that we are treating the data with respect, almost like practical researchers. And then artificial intelligence in a trained, useful way to accelerate and iterate and optimize our decision cycle. We conclude with a final piece of critical thinking simply because there was so much creativity on the front end of this that you need an insurance policy to make sure that you've brought this back into the practical world where execution is demanded. So taken together, we see the complexity toolkit as an integrated operator's package of tools that are used in that way and not simply 5 one-off tools that are used independently. So we're trying to, in our new foundations block this next year, is to treat each of those as their own component of this work. And it turns out that Rich's creativity work in this whole project was central to understanding why we needed the toolkit, what the components should be, and how they fit together in a solution. So we're going to be learning our way forward through this process next year with faculty and students that are taking it on in that way for the first time. So that's everything I wanted to say about Complexity Toolkit and my portion of the AI judging, and I'd be happy to take questions on that later. Back over to you, Rich, to carry us forward.
Thanks, Ken. Okay, so including, so here's where we're going from here. So we're rolling out new critical and creative thinking and the addressing VUCA. Let me move that so you can actually see it. There we go. Okay, investigating human AI collaboration in an educational context. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to give near real-time feedback to people on their creativity levels. And then the complexity toolkit is what we're going to be doing this year. That's our contact information. Again, I'll make sure we can get these slides out to you guys. What questions does anybody have? Yes, sir.
Do you get any pushback on the idea of AI assessing? So the model's great. I love it. The AI assessment of creativity. It sort of push back the philosophical sense of, can a machine truly know what's creative?
Sure.
How would the data make it?
Well, I mean, just like every other organization, you know, you've got people on both sides of this issue. I mean, Ken's doing an awful lot of work on artificial intelligence. I'm sort of like in the middle, you know, and then I've got people, my academic team leader absolutely loathes it. He thinks it's the worst thing that ever happened to us. And so, yes, we get pushback. And I don't know how this is going to work in the future, but I think that the leadership we have realizes either we will use artificial intelligence or it will be used on us. There's really no choice in this matter.
Yeah, there's three categories. There's three use cases for AI. Use case one, a human who rejects the use of AI. And to be honest, a human brain against my human brain plus AI, I win every time. Use case three is a human who gives up and just trusts whatever the AI says. So an AI against my human brain plus AI, they lose every time. Use case two is a sensible, trained, professional, personalized teamwork between a human as the senior partner and the AI as the supporting staff. It demands constant attention and mutual training in order to get the best out of that team. The cultural shift that we're experiencing on that is extraordinary. There are 5 demographics. There's the true believers who just need encouragement. There are the skeptics who need to see evidence in support of the claims. That's rich. There are the reluctant people who will do exactly as they're told and not be happy. And then there are the active resistors who we hope won't do any harm. And to be honest, those guys are self-selecting to be out of a job because they are fighting against the trend of history. The 5th demographic are the project managers like me who are already in a state of constant despair and sadness, looking at the next year of trying to integrate this culture. It's like 50 miles of bad road. So yeah, you get the diffusion of innovation curve shows exactly where we are. The students love it, the faculty hate it, you know, and grandparents say, get off my lawn. That's exactly what it feels like. It's an easier justification to use AI to evaluate compartmentalized creativity than it is to do something expansive like evaluate the quality, content, style, and organization of writing. That's a separate, larger fight, and that's one that we're engaged in. Over.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I've got time for one last question.
Yep. So first is a short comment. AI used for marking seems to be something we're starting to like. AI used for data analysis and thematic analysis, something we're getting a lot more pushback against. I'm not sure why, but maybe it threatens us more than maybe marking or analysis for AI. Second is a question. I work in entrepreneurship, particularly around intentions theory, and creativity is a big one for us. Now, I'm assuming, I don't think it's a given, that you think creativity can be taught rather than being an inherent trait. To what degree do you think the inherent trait impacts on the creativity learning of the individual?
I'll put it this way, and it's a great way to kind of round this out because I got to get this over to.
Don't take your time.
But I would start the class by saying, hey, let me see a show of hands in here. How many people think they're creative? And I'd maybe get one hand, some classes and nobody. And I said, I hope by the end of this class, you'll realize you're more creative than you give yourself credit for. Because here's my evidence. If I put you in a situation where someone's shooting at you and trying to kill you, you will become creative or you won't be here anymore. And so I think what we need to do is not teach people to be creative. It's wake up the creativity they've got in them that they're unaware of.
So, again, sorry, I know it's a take time, I know you're all short time, but from what I understand, what you're saying is creativity for you is inherent, and the teaching essentially draws it out,
Yeah.
as opposed to saying,
Yeah.
I can be creative.
Yeah, let me pile on that. Fletcher's central idea is that nature and nurture, with respect to creativity, your brain has inherited 10 million years of evolution that makes you innately creative in order to respond to a very dangerous world. So that's their nature, I should say. Nurture has educated us out of that default position of being creative. We have learned to not be creative and to treat it as a separate trait. What you should be measuring is your willingness to suppress your inner instinct. And what Fletcher's experiential-based teaching does is suppress that cognitive filter and just unleash the innate creativity that's part of our biology. So his idea of story thinking is that it's connected to biological processes that everybody has, and our natural state is to be creative. It is a learned state to be compliant and suppressive. So in that sense, it doesn't really align with trait theory. It really is more about human nature and our default processing. Over.
Thanks, Ken. Hey, thanks for all the questions. Thank you very much. Ken, Devin, that went really well. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and sign out. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.